Hello, facilitators, and welcome to another video on the Waves of Communication channel. My name is Marci Melzer. I'm an intuitive, a speech language pathologist, and a natural spoken language facilitation coach and consultant. I specialize in virtual autism and helping parents reconnect with their kids who've been hooked on technology and facilitate the spoken language they need so they can share their wisdom with the world. So, thank you so much for joining me today. My topic today is trauma. I'm going to be talking about how trauma affects language and what you can do. So, this was a topic that I was inspired to do because there are many of the parents that are joining me for clients, for consultations, all of these kinds of things, and they are um, in the midst of different kinds of trauma, and their trauma experience and their child's trauma experience are significantly affecting their journey. And so what I wanted to do was really address all of that with you, and it's a real sensitive subject. And so we're just going to do our best with it, okay? Take what resonates with what I say, then accepts to you, and realize that there's all kinds of trauma going on right now. And we all can do our best to work through it. So thanks for joining me today. This is what we're going to do. Oh, by the way, I want to ask you to subscribe to my channel. I am very close to 8,000 subscribers, and I really want to hit that goal. That's when YouTube starts to bring more people to the channel naturally and organically, and we want to teach those algorithms. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe now. All right, let's get into what we're going to be talking about. Trauma is real and serious. And I want to remind you first that I am not a trauma specialist. I do work with people who have trauma. But anyone who's struggling with trauma, meaning it is affecting your everyday life, you're not sleeping, you're not eating, you're really feeling traumatized every day, I encourage you to work with a professional who is a trauma counselor, who's trained in trauma response, because it's not a joke. It's something that's happening all over the world, and there are people who deal with it. Now, my position, I deal with parents who are working with spoken language development. And if you haven't signed up for my free Get Started guide and newsletter, I'm going to encourage you to do that right now. All right, let's get into what we're going to be talking about today on this video. The video topics about autism and trauma and virtual autism and speech delay and all of these things, okay? So first of all, we're going to explore trauma reaction and response behaviors, because you're probably seeing them and you might not realize that they are actually trauma related. And then I'm going to talk about how trauma causes speech delay and virtual autism symptoms, how it actually definitely affects our spoken language, and what trauma specifically causes those things, because there are trauma that causes speech delay, and then the trauma responses that block the language learning. So that means that the delay persists because trauma responses are blocking the ability to learn. And then I have a 5-step process to work through this trauma with you, whatever kind of trauma you're experiencing. And we're going to talk about all those different things. Now, trauma reaction and response. Nobody asks for trauma. It happens to us. It feels out of our control, and it is very normal to have strong reactions to trauma events, and trauma always causes response. So you can see just a few of them here. Whenever and everybody's response is going to be different based on their own individual self, right? But there always is a response to trauma, and you can see that in these behaviors. And these are the 5 most common. There are people who are adding more onto them, but think about how in your life you're seeing behaviors that might communicate these things. So remember, as a language facilitator, we understand that all behavior is communication. And when your child's in one of these trauma response situations, I often talk about fight or flight, but there are other ones listed here that children are using as coping mechanisms, trauma response, what to do, and why they're using it. So think about some of the behaviors you're trying to interpret in your late talking child, or even in yourself, as we move through this video, so you can identify with these things and follow that 5-step process to work through it. Because remember, it's going to block your process as long as you're in this trauma response. It's just a big circle of trauma response, trauma response, trauma response. Okay, so these are the main ones that people are aware of. Fight, of course, is when you're going to attack or defense with aggression, usually. Verbal or physical, that's fight. Then you can have flight, where the behavior is to withdraw, avoid, or escape the trauma. Like they see it coming and they want to find, a way out of it. And then there is flop, where the person is overwhelmed and unable to act. Just stimuli coming at them, demands, expectations, just input, sensory input, crash and burn, fires, all that kind of stuff. You can freeze. Some people just like deer in headlights. That's what that freeze is. And then flop is when the person fakes helplessness to gain sympathy because they're feeling abused or traumatized. And then fawn is when they're going to appease or charm the traumatizer. All of these are in effort to make the trauma experience stop for them. Okay, so that's what trauma response behaviors are for. So they always have a meaning, and those are the meanings. Now, trauma affects how the brain functions for communication. So what this means is, even if you do know language, trauma can affect the way you're communicating. So it affects these late talkers because it affects their ability to learn the language in the first place. But even through the learning process, in the learning process, and after the learning process, trauma affects how we communicate, like this. Okay, number one, these dysregulated behaviors, feelings we have, they trigger behaviors. So this is when you strike out and hit someone, or slap someone, or scream, or fall on the floor, or swear, whatever. When you're dysregulated, you do behaviors, you do things to get the feelings out because they're dysregulated and they have to be communicated. So remember, you're going to lose the ability to use your words, and it's going to trigger all those behaviors, the tantrum, the meltdown, the facial expression on the minor end, and the throw yourself on the floor or kill someone, literally, on the other end. This dysregulated feelings, they trigger behaviors. Trauma, hurt people, that's where that comes from. And then unable to listen and process information. You can't listen and process. You're too busy dealing with your trauma. So you can't learn, and you can't develop, and you don't even care. You can't listen. And then you also can't access the words that to express your ideas. Again, the mental processes, the blood is flowing to the areas of fight and flight and freeze and all those other things. And then you might also say inappropriate things that you don't mean. That's what happens. Again, different parasympathetic areas of our brain are activated, and we react and respond. And then you might interrupt others and talk over them because you're in that defense mechanism situation, or unable to see alternative ideas or perspectives because what's worked in the past. You're trying to use those things again. So remember, we can't communicate effectively in trauma all the way through our life, from childhood to when we die. Okay. And traumatized language learning systems. Okay. So when the system is traumatized, either from the first time or repeated or whatever, these systems need repair and maintenance to recover, because remember, without recovery, you're going to be stuck in the cycle of that response behavior because you're in fear of the trauma recovering again, and you don't know what to do when it happens again. That's what that 5-step process at the end of this video is going to be about. So neuroplasticity and trauma response research show that brains do recover with the right intervention, but you have to follow a process and actually address the trauma and not, the behavior, right? Okay, so again, please like and share this video for me. Keep watching for my 5-step process and help me hit 8,000 subscribers. Guys, this helps me more than anything. Okay, now, trauma that causes speech delay and virtual autism symptoms. That's what we're going to talk about now. So remember, those of you who have children that fall into that virtual autism category, and you've been working hard. You've been dropped the screens a long time ago, and you've been doing things to facilitate whatever those things are. Now, remember, it might have seemed like a good idea or whatever, but there are things that happen in this process that cause trauma to happen. It's a hard thing to figure out, and there's lots of trials and errors and bumps and mistakes and things that happen along the road. And when these mistakes through trial and error happen, people can react and feel traumatized depending on how they go about this repair remedy process, right? Because remember, you're not going to make this happen. Trauma response is something that we all have as an individual to work through ourselves. You can't, even a therapist can't make you feel better. The only way you can feel better is by understanding, this 5-step process that I've got going on. Okay, so trauma can come in 2 ways. We can have immediate shock. That's like, the loss of something, or a big event, a storm, a fire, death, a thing like that. Or it can come in chronic violations. So when you think about long term, like those people who can relate to a chronic or childhood PTSD situation where they've had over and over and over situations from parents or bosses or siblings or cousins or anybody in your life, professionals. Chronic violations where you put yourself or you found yourself in situations where you were violated over and over and over again, physically, emotionally, whatever. And children feel this trauma when their parents are traumatized. So that's the other thing you also need to realize, that maybe you suffered some trauma in your childhood, in your marriage, in your family, and all of these things that really affected you. And you could still be carrying those trauma response behaviors with you into your parenting experience with your late talker. Okay, so you're gonna, as you move through this, like I said earlier in the video, you really need to think about the behaviors you see and the feelings you have and why those things tie together, maybe as a reaction or response from trauma. Okay, so let's move into what they are. These trauma, what is the trauma? Different kinds of trauma, okay, because there are lots of them. And the first one, the most obvious, is that physical trauma, where there's illness or injury in the child or in the parent. And this is a chronic illness, a child who's sick over and over and over again, a child who's had big illness. Remember, these trauma could be either in one big event, an accident or a infection or something like that, or in repeated kinds of physical trauma where there are, all different kinds of physical things like going on over and over again. So for example, if you've got chronic allergies or asthma or something like that, where you're always afraid, immune issues, any of those physical illnesses that cause you to be always on guard. I have to avoid germs, allergies to foods, things like that. If you're avoiding gluten or any of those preservatives or all those things, and you're controlling those diets, right? The idea of restriction, loss, any of those things feels like trauma to kids. They used to be able to eat ice cream. Now they can't eat ice cream. That's a bummer that they feel somewhere in them. If you ignore that bummer, these situations happen. Do you see how we can talk about how trauma can happen? So if the parent's physical recovery process might distract, so like the parent has had an accident or illness and they're too busy in the hospital to parent, they're too busy literally healing, having another baby, something like that, or the child's illness. So when a child has a chronic or repeated illness or a big one, the parents always worry and fear. And then there is a natural delay in development. So when the child's feeling better, then the parent suddenly starts to worry about development. It's this cycle of, oh no, I've got, physical things going on. And then see what happens was 100% focus on symptoms and treatments that offer recovery, because you're so tired of being sick and tired that you just want whatever, right? And you don't want the child upset. You want them healing and feeling better, because you don't like it when they cry in pain or feel their illness or all those other things. So you give them lots of tech in this time. So maybe you were one of those moms that had a child who had chronic illness and you couldn't help it, just like the COVID time happened, right? We couldn't help but give the child the tablet because there was no other way to keep up the IV or the feeding tube or the procedure to go, and they had to have a lot of procedures, or diet, anything that you need to use these tools for to make your child's life better in that moment, right? All of that was going on, and it really does add up over time if you've got these chronic illness things. So I know there's moms out there, I know who you are, Miss Haley, who have kids and personal illnesses that have been chronic and chronic and chronic, and you want to be a facilitator, you want to go out there, you want to do the best for your child, but you've got to deal with these physical things first. I mean, you can't talk if you're not alive, literally. In some cases, you have to take care of these things first. But now, after the fact, you've got this recovery to get through. So remember, you could be one of those moms that's in the physical category, but it's not the only category, okay? And remember, whenever we're in trauma, especially physical trauma recovery, that tech is always the first thing we go to. And it just happens for a reason. I mean, just what we do. All right. So here's the next area. It's environmental trauma and loss. And this is when you're losing a home, a loved ones, they're dying, or they're moving away, or something happens that you're not around them anymore. You used to be relying on them to help you. Your tribe is gone, or your money issues. Your money is either gone over time. You've spent all your money on therapies and this and that and this and that didn't work, remedies and interventions and all this stuff. And now you're feeling this loss, either a big one or over time, a long time. So these COVID lockdowns, it caused a lot of environmental trauma, unexpected loss of resources. We didn't have teachers, we didn't have schools, we didn't have money, we lost our jobs, we lost our friends, we lost our family, and 100% focus is now because you have had this loss in the past. This trauma recovery, right? You're stuck in saving resources and getting back what is lost and not letting these things happen to you again, if possible. So you're, getting your vaccines, or you're staying away from people, or you're, staying healthy and keeping your body healthy so you don't get sick, right? You're avoiding these things. You're saving resources. You're focused on these things because those things took from you. This environmental trauma was a big deal. Moving country, here's another one, extra stress. You've got to adapt, and you've got to adapt your kids to new languages, cultures, food, climate, clothes, the way people talk, what people eat, all the things. Over and over and over and over. It's stress and trauma, and you're gonna have a response, okay? The next one is situational trauma, and this is one, unfortunately, that we put ourselves into. Because those other things happen, we find ourselves in desperation mode. And then we put ourselves in situations that we end up getting traumatized. We didn't ask for the trauma. Remember, we never did ask for it. But sometimes we put ourselves in situations where it happens anyway, okay? And that's like this, where you signed up for something and it wasn't what you expected. Excuse me. The trauma is controlling the experience of the person who's experiencing the trauma. Someone is trying to force that person to act, okay, on their committee for whatever reasons. And these are the traumatic things that people do to people to make them act, because in a lot of these cases, they're making them act to do something that they wouldn't do themselves. They wouldn't normally do. It might not be good for them. There are reasons that they don't do that. There are fears, there are worries, there are real things about it. But somehow, this situational trauma conned you. It convinced you. You got sucked in by these things that are used to intentionally, I hate to say, traumatize people, okay? And this is how swindlers work, right? So they use bribes. They give and take the goodies for the actions. If you don't do the right action, you don't get the goodie, okay? Whatever that goodie is to you. They withhold assistance and support until action is taken. You can't have, or I won't do for you, or whatever. You have to do it yourself. And they do this to force someone to do it themselves. I think you can do it, whether you think you can do it or not. I'm just going to not help you and make you have to do it, right? Now there's another one, judge and test. So what they'll do is they'll just keep looking for deficits and disorders to justify the fact that they can make the child do something or make you do something. They're going to judge and test you. Remember, these things happen to children and to adults, right? All over the world in all different situations. So whatever situation you were put in where someone used these tactics on you to force you to do something that you don't want to do, this is situational trauma, okay? They will compare your performance and investment with others to make you give more or do more because they did more, and why don't you? That kind of thing. She did it, why don't you? They're gonna make you do it. Whether what she did or he did was good or not doesn't matter. This person who's inflicting this trauma wants to make you be like them, okay? And they will add on pressure to increase. Once you start or you give in to any of these other things, they will add on pressure to increase the performance levels or investment of time, money, and resources indefinitely, as long as they know these people who inflict this trauma, because this is a situation you got yourself into that somebody was trying to take from you, okay? And you know what they are. These are the things you spent money on that didn't work for you. Why didn't they work? Because they use these tactics to get you to push beyond your comfort zone in it. Okay. And there's reasons and things to do to push beyond your comfort zone, but not when it doesn't feel right to you. Only when it feels like a good idea to you should you be doing that. And if you don't, if you are taken advantage of, that's situational trauma. Okay. Because it happens. I know people say one thing and do something else. They promise one thing and do something else. We're going to talk about what those behaviors look like. Okay. So now listen, for those of you who watch my videos, the late talking journey alone is often very traumatic for parents and late talkers. And parents and children are still suffering because they're stuck in trauma response behaviors that cause more trauma. That's the cycle I'm talking about. You see your child having a fit on the floor. You don't know what to do. You go back to prompting or forcing or making or doing or whatever. They have more tantrums, or you get through this one thing and then you need to move on, right? So it's just a big cycle that a lot of parents get stuck in because they're not understanding about trauma. Okay, so here is what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk about what these behaviors look like with the people who are talking to me, the people who are sending me notes, the people who are reaching out in desperation in the middle of the night. I get these messages, I need you now. This is what they're going through. This is what happened. Okay, so trauma is a tool used by professionals who want you to give away your power, energy, time, and money, just like we just talked about that situation trauma. Now, some people use feelings for manipulation. They promise rapid recovery, right? Okay, this is what's going to make your kid talk. This diet, this pill, this zapper, this brain, energy, inflammation stuff, right? They're going to just say, this is going to do it. This is what's wrong. All we got to do is this thing, and then it'll all be better, right? That's manipulation, because there's nothing that works like that. And then they use fear to keep you in control, because when that thing doesn't work and you doubt it, then they pull oh no, if you stop, your child's going to fail. They just need a little more. You've got to do a little more. No, this is what's evidence-based and proven, right? And they're going to keep you in control. And then again, when you give into those things, they're going to use pressure to make you do things you don't believe in, keep you coming back. You don't feel good about it because they're like, you have no other choice. This is the only thing that works. I know I'm the expert. This is what's wrong with your child. If all of this sounds familiar to you, then you have experienced this trauma. And I imagine to say that everyone watching my videos has had at least one person do this to them, right? That just say that they're going to promise something and then it doesn't deliver, okay? Now, this is what it looks like in children. This is emotional trauma, right? This is when someone controls what the child feels, just like someone was controlling you, what the child feels, so they'll perform, okay? So remember, trauma is the tool used by anyone, a therapist, a teacher, a big sister, a nanny, an aunt, whoever, a karate instructor. If they're going to traumatize your child, that means they're using that as a tool so they can show their power over your kid. Look what I made him do, or I can make him do, okay? These are the people who put you in that situational trauma because it's never working, right? Anyone who said they could make their kid do it, they might be able to make them do a little, but not much more, because very soon they're gonna start to rebel against this demand, and then the kids are gonna, and then they're gonna pull the tools out, the emotional trauma tools. Oh, I feel so sad if you don't do it. How many of you mommies do the mom guilt thing? Feelings for manipulation. That's what mom guilt is. And if it happens all the time, or if it really affects a child, if you make your child sad or make them do something they really don't want to do and cry through it because now they're sad because they don't want you to be sad, they took your feelings away. That's not nice. And that's trauma. Okay? Using fear to keep a child obedient. The police will come. I'll whack you, blah, 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 blah. The threats. Okay, that's what that is. And then there's pressure to break the child's independent thoughts. They will push through these things as long as they can until they are quote unquote broken. If you've ever heard someone talk about how they break a kid's will because they are a strong-willed child who's into everything, and you got that firm, whatever kind of teacher, I'm just going to say firm, right? To break the child's will, right? And that's what's going to happen. This is how emotional trauma looks. So we already had physical, we had situational, now we got this emotional trauma that's happening to children every day. Late talking children every single day, these things happen to them. Remember, they're gonna have a response, okay? So trauma response behaviors are super common in households with late talker. They're the things that you're calling red flag behaviors. Okay, most parents don't realize that the behaviors they are seeing, using as parents, because you're traumatized by these worry about your kids' stuff. We're going to talk about it, right? And you're seeing it in your kids and you're reflecting each other. Trauma, 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 circle, circle, circle. And you're worried about that it's autism, but it's not, it's trauma. Okay. So this is a response to trauma. It is not autism, these behaviors, right? They are triggered by situations or emotional responses or physical things, okay? Now, common response for trauma behaviors. This is where you're going to see it in yourself. These are the behaviors that I see in my clients and followers when they send me desperation messages, okay? This is what the trauma response behavior that you're stuck in. Fighting over the diagnosis and arguing with professionals who already know everything, okay? Hyper focus on symptoms. Is that behavior normal? Is it normal? Is it good? And you don't even want to know if it's on the red flag thing. Is it normal? Is it okay? Is it good or bad? Right? Hyper focus. Analysis paralysis is the next one. Is that behavior bad? Is it working? Is it good? All of this business. Is it normal? Is it bad? All of that business. You're too busy analyzing and overanalyzing and hyperanalyzing and then trying to force some change, right? Second guessing. Do others think I am bad? I'm a bad mother? Think about how many times you thought this is your response to trauma. It's not bad that it's happening to you, but I'm calling it out because this is happening because you haven't worked through that trauma. You're still stuck, okay? Endless searching. Who or what will make me feel better or make my kid? The only thing that's going to make you feel better is when your kid starts talking, right? And then there's this impatience and worry and doubt that anything will work because you won't try anything long enough because you're stuck in this trauma response behavior. You keep getting re-triggered, fighting over symptoms. Is this therapist good? Is this therapist good? Because you've been swindled. No, I get it. You've been misled. You've been lied to. Your child's been misdiagnosed. They've told you things about your child. Professional people who say they know everything told you things that were not true. And you accepted them because they projected themselves to be an expert. Okay. And that again happened to you. You went to the expert. They sold you a bag of goods that wasn't what it was. And now I don't want you to do the same to your child, right? Okay. Because we need to really be aware, because now you see if these things are happening to you, it's because you were triggered into trauma and now you're in fight or flight or freeze or fawn or something. Right? Even when people say, I'm the best and they can't work without me, that's a fawn behavior, you guys. I love that you love me, but I'm not here to fix anything. I'm here to guide you to fix yourself. This is all in your mind and your energy and your feelings and your being and what you do, the choices you make of what you do and what you say, because it's not working up there. It's chaos in there. It's trying to calm down. It's trying to get organized. It's trying to understand and move forward and feel good again. Okay. If you are struggling through your everyday life, not feeling good and not knowing what to do, it's because you're not organized and you're stuck in trauma response. This is why I can write a whole entire workbook. Look at all these resources that are here to teach you exactly step by step by step by step what to do. Why can't you do it? Because you're stuck in these behaviors. These are the behaviors that keep you out of it. Okay. So lecture over, let's talk about the kids, because I want to show you what trauma response looks like in lay talkers with virtual autism. Okay, so they show you when they are still stuck in trauma, they're not regulated and ready to listen and learn. They will show you resistant behavior. They oppose directives and they won't accept no. A child who is regulated and who has facilitation consistently all day will accept no when no is appropriate. But if they're too stuck in fight or flight, every request is a no. So then they also will be avoidant, which means that's the flight, right? There's the fight, resistance, the flight, avoidant, the self-talk, which is that you did a good job, you're okay, you're all right, you say it, blah, 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 when they talk by themselves in the other room and they won't talk to you. Okay. And they're encouraging themselves. They're saying, good job. They're saying nice things about themselves. They're trying to regulate their own emotions because they're not hearing it enough to get rid of their trauma. Okay. Now they also will physically control their environment with their body. They'll push, they'll pull, they'll slap, they'll throw, they'll start to get physical. Okay. And tantrums are part of that. It could start with whining and sulking and crying and move into aggression and full out lay on the floor, slug people, biting, these kinds of things. Okay. And then the anxiety stems. That's the ear covering, nail biting, picking, chewing. Do you see how all of these things are the things that are on the red flag behaviors, but yet they are clearly evident of trauma response behavior? Fight, flight, freeze, flee, fawn, they're all right here. Okay, so if you are seeing these in your kids, then that 5-step process at the end of this video, you need to start working with, because you got to help your child work through this trauma. Okay, and you got to remember your own too. Okay, so here we go. The 5-step process to work with trauma response for language facilitation, because my philosophy and what has worked to be true for not just my clients, but myself. Okay, so I am a trauma survivor myself, and I work every day. I have worked for many years on long-term CPSD trauma that I didn't even know I was in until I was 50 years old. Okay, so I know that it takes time to work through these things, but with some easy behavior changes and some ideas, awareness, all the things that I'm going to talk about in this 5-step process, now it's right here. There's no more calling it autism. Is it this? Is it that? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it that? It's trauma response behaviors. And now I'm going to show you how to work through and with them to get past it, so you can dig in and be the facilitator that you want to be and that your child needs. Okay, here we go. That's it. When trauma is eliminated and the damage is addressed, the natural language development system can recover and operate well, because it is traumatized and we need to get it going. So step 1 is get aware. That starts with this video, right? And decide to stop the trauma cycle. So all of those identifications, those videos that listed all those behaviors and all those traumatic experiences and all that stuff, if you're anywhere close to any one of those things, you need to identify the source of them. What was the shock? Where were the repeated violations? Are you the source of that for your child, or was it a therapist, somebody else like that? If you see those behaviors in your child, where did you learn it? Why did you decide to do it? Or was there a big shock? Did you move country 3 times like one of my clients? Did you lose family members to COVID? Did you, everybody had that COVID situation. So that was one. If it was nothing else that was traumatic in your life, and you have a child between 3 and 7, COVID is your source. Then the next thing is what triggered you yourself into fight, flight, fear, flop, or fawn. And then you're going to look at it for your child too, because you're going to see how it happened for your child. And then you're going to see how it came through you or around you to your child, because you made a choice to give this away, right? And we're going to talk about how to take it back and get it done. Now, eliminate this source from your everyday experience. So whatever it was, and I'm serious about this. If ABA is triggering your child, if they are crying when you're going to the session, I don't care if it's ABA, speech, if it's gym, if it's football, if it's art, and your child is crying on the way to that thing because they keep getting traumatized there and you don't know why, and you keep taking them, it is time to stop now. You won't get anywhere if you keep pushing this trauma cycle. This, yeah, it'll be okay, it's not so invasive, or it'll be okay to have a little trauma. How do you feel having a little trauma? Nobody feels good having any. And as long as it's a little trauma over and over and over again, these behaviors won't change. And that's why you're here watching this video. You want these red flag, anxiety, fight and flight behaviors to change into connected, understanding, listening, focused attention, so you can teach your child. Because when you're traumatized or they're traumatized or both, which is probably true, none of the work is getting done, no matter how hard you try. Okay, so we've got to get through this process so you can get back to the workbook and all that stuff. All right, here we go. So what we're going to do is you're going to identify the behaviors that are blocking your progress, and look at the next slide. So I'm going to point them out again to identify what you can change, because we want to see, once you get rid of the source, now you got to look, if the source is you got to get rid of the behaviors that are in you. Okay, so these are the trauma response behaviors that distract parents from facilitation. You're going to see some of these again: feeling lost and focusing on symptoms. He can't, he isn't, he didn't. These are the words that people will try to put into your head to make you doubt and change and do it. They re-trigger your trauma. Okay, so fights over autism and virtual autism diagnosis. Is it autism? Is it virtual autism? I'm telling you, put the diagnosis away and focus on your trauma. Focus on what's going on now. What have you done? What are you doing now? Is it a nice, easy, regulated situation? Or are you still in trauma response? This is it, this is it, this is it, this. What evaluation do we need? How many more professionals do you need to book appointments with? Okay, to decide that nobody knows if it's autism or true autism, because those words are just thrown around and labeled into nice little packages to sell you a product or service to fix it. Okay, whether it's autism or virtual autism or whatever that. Somebody who you say it's virtual autism and they're an autism therapy center, they're going to say virtual autism doesn't exist. I can only fix autism. So you bring your kid here and I'll fix them. You know, that fix my kid mentality. All right, here we go. Let's go. So that's it. We don't want to fix the broken system either. Okay, so that's what we talked about, all that down there. Disagreements with schools or therapists. Doubt that you can be as effective a facilitator as any of these people are. You are more effective. You are the best. Once you learn how and get over your trauma, you're good. Okay, and if you're disagreeing with schools or therapists, that means they're trying to push you to do something you don't want to do or you don't feel is right for your kid. There are choices. There's always choices. Okay, if you keep searching for remedies outside of yourself, therapies, professionals, diets, zappers, pills, fish oil, all that business, you're distracting from the time you need to spend talking to your kid. Okay, praying and hoping for a miracle. This is happening a lot. People are hoping that when they just have a conversation with me, their kid's going to magically start talking, and none of that's true. There is no magic anything. Your child needs you. And trying to fix the broken educational system by yourself because you're so traumatized, you don't want other parents to be traumatized. This happens too. It's not your job. Your job is to be the facilitator for your child. Okay, so these are the responses that distract you from doing what you need to do. So you look at those things and you give them up. Step 2, forgive the experience and let go. Something else you got to let go of. attachment to that trauma. It is terrible when people take advantage of us. It is the worst, okay? It feels like, yeah, it feels horrible. It feels traumatic, okay? So so that's why you just can't get over it. And there are some people that in their nature get really attached to that. They like to talk about it. They're complainers. Okay. Some people you know in your life find things to complain about. Those people are coming in your life to test you, to see if you'll join their mindset in complaining about the situation or say, no, thank you. I've had enough of complaining and I want to do something. I want to figure out what's going on because my child's brain is super plastic right now and I can change it. So that's what this has to happen. It has to. It has to happen. And you got to forgive them and just move on. Thank you. Well, put me on the wait list. Because they'll give you all this stuff. Just thank you very much. We appreciate what you've done for us. It's time to go. And then you got to let go of your attachment to cause and blame. Whatever caused your kid, if it was the diet your wife ate when she was pregnant. This happens a lot to families where people are blaming their diet or whatever. You just got to let go of it because it's distracting you and you got to get into doing what you're doing. Let go. Focus on what you can do now for your child and trust yourself that you can learn how to parent. Parents been doing this forever. You've just been distracted by your trauma response. Now you can trust yourself to learn what you need if you don't know what you need, and you can get consistent with what you need when you do know what you need to do, because one of those things isn't happening. But you got to trust yourself that you can do it. And then you got to focus on your child's abilities. And anybody who points out what's wrong or what's this or what's that, you come back with he's learning physics, he's figuring out science, he's memorizing things. That's how he learns best. He's in his mental process gathering information so he can grow up and develop the next great invention. That's my child. Maybe it doesn't look like other kids or your child or what you're judging right now because they're coming at you with that judgment and stuff. You just got to be strong enough to let go of all of it. When people give it to you and project it at you and offer it to you, you got to say, no, thank you. No, thank you. I appreciate your opinion. I respect your advice. I know it's coming from a good place. Thank you. Thank you. I'm good. I'm good. I'm figuring out how to help my child myself. And when I see how brilliant he is, and when I do the right thing, I know that I am. And that's why we got to move on to the next step. Okay. So remember, you got to let go of this so you can look for and facilitate the thing that you need, which is this experience. Okay. So listen, step 2, sorry, moving to the next slide. You have to, what do you want? Think right now. What do you want to teach your child? Anything you want to teach them, anything. Leave trauma behind and just teach them that. Reconnect through that. And show your child how powerful you are as a facilitator. Okay, so you're going to share your plan, path. You're going to talk about this because the thing about trauma is we bury it, we stick it aside, we hide it down to our deepest depths of our whatever because it's not nice. We don't want to relive those experiences unless you're that complainer one. And then you're not reliving them to work through them. You're just reliving them to get attention from people. So you get that, love bombing or whatever they give you. So remember, there's no reason to stick with this trauma at all. None. Okay. So you got to help your child move through. You're the facilitator. Now that you've let it go, you're going to share the path to recovery from it with a new plan. And you're going to start by talking about your feelings and ideas out loud because that's going to help you process through your trauma. I don't like that, therapist. I don't think we should go back there anymore. I don't think that you're that. When you say these things out loud to your child and they realize that you're considering their experience and sharing the way out, right? Look, I know this wasn't nice for you and we're getting out. They're going to be on board with you right now. And then you share your plans and prepare for tasks together. Everything you do, show them that they're your team member, all right? You're going to teach through stories. What worked for you before? Something worked that you already know how to brush teeth or how to surf, like I said, whatever this is. Discuss why. Every request that you make, so you know that it's coming from, not from trauma, but from a real functional reason that you're talking, okay? You're not asking your child where you're going when you're on the way to the zoo because you just want to hear them say it. You're going to say, hey, we're going to the zoo. Or you're going to say, where do you want to go when zoo is one of the choices, right? But you always say that by saying, like, I want you to decide where we're going this week. You have the power to pick where we go, which is the why. And then you say, where do you want to go? But you don't ask questions you already know the answers to, right? So you're going to swap prompting with step-by-step demonstrations, as you've seen in every one of my videos, because remember, step-by-step demonstrations is the path to the plan. That's what I'm doing right now, step 3, okay? And then you're going to respond with interest and reflection when your child approaches you. And this is really important, this last one, interest and reflection. First, you're going to stop for a minute instead of reacting, because that's what trauma does, makes us reactive instead of responsive. Okay, you're reacting to the trauma response. The response is going on in here with dopamine and cortisol and all that stuff that's happening in your brain that makes you do things you don't want to do or say things you don't want to say. Okay, sometimes in trauma, that's when language comes out for the first time because that area of the brain is so popped with neurotransmitters that the language flies out. We've talked about that, how movement does that too. Strong emotion does it as well. Fear, all of that makes us scream. So that's where you're gonna see language come out. You swear, you scream, you do all of those things. Okay, so let's talk about this new plan that you're going to be doing when you're responding with interest and reflection. Now there's no more prompting. You're just going to say, what's he talking about? Oh, you're talking about this. Let's move on and talk about it together. Let's work on it together. And you've got to make a plan to guide your child out of trauma. My workbook helps parents develop a plan. There's these focus topics, many things, just ideas for you to choose from, but you have a million more ideas in your brain. And then you make a plan that you stick to every day and you document, what are you going to do? Why are you going to do it? Why did you pick those strategies? How are they working? You're going to document every day, okay? And that's how that's how you're going to prove that none of this is due to any kind of disorder. It's just all hiding under the skills and abilities and language that you're going to facilitate out. It's all hiding under trauma response. Your nice facilitation effort, the language models, the demonstrations, they're hiding under your trauma response, and the child's response is hiding under theirs. Okay? So when these trauma response behaviors, that cycle of trauma response is gone, now we can move forward, okay? So you're going to acknowledge your influence and take back your power, okay? This is what number 4 says. Reconnect and play with your child on their terms. Earn their trust. Because remember, we don't trust people who traumatize us, even if it was little bitty fun ones, teasies over and over and over again. That was the sort of trauma that I experienced as a kid. My mom was, said unkind things a lot, and I had to get used to it as teasing. Okay, so that's just one example. You want to connect with kids on their terms. Kids don't want to be teased. They don't want to be tricked. They don't want to be manipulated. They don't want to be bribed. They want to be joined and demonstrated. Show me what's good, mom, right? What's good idea do you have? They want motivation and inspiration and opportunity, okay, on their terms. And you're going to find that opportunity and inspiration to attract your child. That's what they're going to come to you for, with functional jobs, things that are valuable to them, either activities that keep them clean and fed and happy, or things that they want to explore and grow and learn and do more of, okay? And how you're going to do this is you're going to change the way you talk. You're going to be slower. You're going to use more detail. Just start there, because you're teaching them what you want to teach them, and you're going to track them with fun things that they want to learn and need to learn that are valuable to them. Give up this matching and business and imitation. None of it's valuable and helpful, and it's just re-traumatizing your kid, that imitation stuff. So parallel play with stories and pretend, this stick is a sword, this stick is a microphone, that kind of pretend, to model language. This is the language your child has missed while you were in trauma response, okay? Stay consistent with activities until they are mastered. Stick with it, Okay, leave the trauma behind. You don't have energy or time for it because you've got to figure out how to brush teeth and all the things you got to do. Wear shoes, put your seatbelt on, wear your jacket, all that stuff. You got to journal your experiences every day and monitor your progress, because if you don't, you won't be consistent. You got to have your own accountability. Okay, and accountability is what makes consistency, and your plan and your power, all this. And then you're going to record videos every week or as often as you want to see the functional results for yourself. Because when you look at those videos from 2 weeks ago, after you've been working your plan, you're not thinking about the progress. You're just working your plan. You're connecting with your kid. You're talking more. You're showing them things. You're stop prompting them, and you're nice. It feels nice. It's not traumatic. It's not pressurized anymore. It's just modeling and nice time together where you can be in the same place without somebody in fight, flight, fear, flop, fawn, or whatever, because they're switching from one behavior to the other based on what you present to them. You present to them something that they don't need to be afraid of, that they're interested and curious to do, and they'll show up every time, look at your face and smile and listen and learn and do it. This is how this works, but all the trauma is blocking it. Isn't that wild? It's crazy how strong that trauma is. You will see the results for yourself when you record your videos, okay? All right, let's see what I've got to say about step 4. My advice here is to, use these level charts in my workbook. So I've got 7 levels, and they help you see how facilitation is working. And when your child's connected, you can teach them anything you know. And in the charts, you see the line here. When they are below the line, especially on this connection chart, when they are below the line, these are the fight, flight, or fear behaviors or any of the other things. And above the line is where they're going to be able to learn. So if you have a workbook, this connection level is where trauma response work happens, because it only happens as you get rid of all the trauma stuff and you reconnect and start over by teaching your child. Okay, so this line, it's on every one of the charts. Below the chart, either the parent is in fight or flight, or the child is in fight or flight, and trauma response stuff is going on. Okay, because when you're out of it, it happens naturally. And then what you're going to do is you're going to sustain this powerful problem solving mindset. You are powerful, more powerful than any of this forced stuff is a nice facilitation experience. You're going to structure your home to equip and your child manage at school. So you've got stuff, rules, you've got things you do at home. There's the right way to do the laundry, the right way to cook, like that. And then you're going to consistently challenge the child's interest and abilities, whatever they are this week. It's going to change from climbing to eating to pouring to water to who knows what. Whatever it is this week, you're so connected with them, you're going to make missions surrounding those things. Hey, let's go to the gym and climb the thing, or let's go to the park and see if we can climb up the rock face or whatever, right? Missions, challenge missions. These make your kids work the parts of their brain that were too traumatized to do anything. Now they are motivated and the dopamine's going the right place toward effort to things that they want to improve upon, missions or figure out or accomplish. That's what a mission does, right? And then you're going to establish and negotiate rules, contracts, and expectations. All of this before you go a thing, do a thing, ask a thing. This is my job. This is your job. This is what I'm going to do. This is what you're going to do. This is how much you get paid, whatever, all that stuff. They need to know what to expect, and then they can be calm. Because if they can expect trauma, they'll leave. And now you know, whoops, what am I presenting to them? Am I back to presenting the thing I want, or the thing they need, or the thing that is going to make trauma come back again? Okay, so use cooperative problem solving for jobs and games. I've got videos that dig into all the strategies to use all these things, but cooperative problem solving, let's figure this out together instead of I got this, I'll rescue you, I'll figure it out, I'll do it for you. You have to solve these problems together for jobs and games. Oh no, the basketball thing is so high, how are we going to get the ball way up there? Problem solving together for these things instead of solving the problem for your kid. This is a really big, powerful experience when you solve a problem or finish a mission, and you want that level of your child's brain to be built confidence instead of fear, right? And then you're going to prepare your child for new experiences. You're going to tell them ahead about everything, especially something new, but even the things that you've done before, because you never know what's going to happen these days. Trauma is everywhere. And then you're going to facilitate tolerance and acceptance for all those things that do come at you. I don't know this. I don't understand this. This is weird to me. I don't understand what it is. And you're going to see if it's something that is a good thing to be part of or not a good thing to be part of. And if it's not a good thing to be part of, you just say, okay, that's what they do over there. We just don't do that. Same with the people who say, my kid needs ABA and my kid is level this autism and my kid is this and that. And we have the best therapist in the world and we love her and she helps our kid and all that stuff. You just accept those people, forgive them. Thank you very much. I love that for you. Wonderful. Okay. Because you are too powerful to let this trauma take you down again. You're going to navigate it. It's going to come at you. Rules, expectations, people telling you you can and can't do, okay? And when you discover how powerful you are, you won't be as susceptible to fear, pressure, and manipulation. We're all potentially susceptible to fear, pressure, and manipulation. These people are sneaky. They're charlatans. They're trying to sell you a bag of goods because they need to make money on your fear, pressure, and manipulation. That's their business model, okay? Self-discovery and healing is up to you. There is no one can do it. People can guide you. Really good professionals can guide you. I can guide you to work with your kid, but you've got to give up these response behaviors. And that's up to you to change your behavior, right? Nobody can do that for you, just like you can't do it for your child. And you will know when you have recovered from trauma because you will see the power of your actions, because you're going to be doing things that you know are designed to get you where you're going. Solve the mission, solve the problem, finish it up. Let's get it done. I want to teach my kid this. He wants to get better at surfing or whatever, okay? Now, next week, everybody, is live Q&A. So I just want to touch base here about this trauma and just remind you that, it is important that if you are suffering from trauma to the point where your health is affected, you're not sleeping, you're really struggling, you're crying all day, every day, you're hiding in the corner and not able to connect with your kid. Therapy is a good thing, okay? There are people who specialize in trauma response, and there's a lot of trauma out there, so there's a lot of people who do it. And you'll just have to really meet and work with the therapist that will help you work with you. Sometimes they're in the form of energy workers, sometimes they're in the form of counselors, but there are people who are specialized in this. So many of them went through their own trauma, and then they became trauma therapists because they know how hard it is to get out of that trauma cycle, because trauma response behaviors are our safety net. They're what we use to recover or cope. Basically cope. It's not a recovery process. We're trying to recover, but basically we're just trying to make the trauma stop, even if it happened a long time ago and it's just replaying in your head and replaying in your head. It's not happening out from the outside in. It's just that one time was so impactful to your being that it's like an anchor on you right now. And that's what trauma does, and trauma response does. It anchors you into the trauma so that you can't move on and work with what your job is, which is the language facilitator. So you are given this beautiful child, or more than one in some cases, that struggle with something. And in your case, it's talking. And the thing is, teaching talking is not impossible. Anybody who can talk can teach talking. Just like I said, you can teach your child, if you can surf, you can teach your child to surf. They might not want to surf, but I know they want to talk. They need to. They have ideas in here, just like you do, that aren't coming out in the language because you're not talking. If you were talking your head off, your kid would be too. But because of trauma response, your energy has been focused somewhere else and not on nice experiences to help your child develop. And without those nice experiences, you're just going to stay stuck. And I don't want that for you. I want you to move forward and I want you to figure it out. So I didn't see any comments today. I know this is a really sort of hot topic, but Next week is live Q&A. So if you are interested, there is a worksheet link in the description. You can complete that worksheet now and send me a little information about your child and your family, and I can talk about it next week on live Q&A. And also, of course, if you have not signed up for my weekly newsletter, I recap what I talk about in the week. I give you access to all the resources you can learn and strategies that don't often happen here in the videos. So the free newsletter is over at wavesofcommunication.com and that big green button, and you can sign up for that. Really want that to happen for you because I don't want to lose touch. And my last, please subscribe. Like this video, not even seeing very many likes. Please like this video, like all the ones that you watch, and subscribe to my channel. I'm very close to 8,000 subscribers, and I really want to hit that. It does a lot for my platform, and that's the best thing that you can do to help me out. If this information was valuable and resonated with you, I'm sending you out a lot of love because I know trauma is no joke. Being a trauma survivor myself, it does affect everything you do in your life unless you figure out your own trauma response behaviors and work through them, detach from this trauma so you can move on in your life, because there is a thing to let it go. I mean, it really is important that you do, because your late talker is waiting for you to join them and teach them the things that they need. They want you to know that. So, okay, thank you so much for joining me, everybody. I'll see you next week for live Q&A. Be sure, again, in the description to fill out that the link to my worksheet. When you do that, then I will see your responses and give you some feedback about maybe your next steps or resources that could help you, or maybe what's keeping you stuck, right? Hopefully this video showed you some things in your life that will help you feel better, and that's what I want for you. All right, that's enough for today. You are the best, and bye for now.